The average teenager is spending 7 hours each day scrolling on their phone. And I did the math. That amounts to 27 years of their lives.
And we're seeing huge spikes in teen anxiety and depression. Did you know that 9% of teens have attempted to take their own lives?
So these tools that are supposed to connect us are actually making us feel more disconnected than ever. How did we get here, and how do we get better?
Those are the questions we're trying to answer through vulnerable and honest conversations with teens and their parents.
And interviews with experts in mental health, legislators, professors, and advocates. If you're a parent or simply worried about social media, you're in the right place. I'm Nicki.
And I'm Ashley. Welcome to Scrolling to Death.
Hi, everybody. So today we have a very special guest and friend, Jessica Madigan. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Hey, Jess.
I'm so excited. I'm like with you guys. Like, I'm not just listening. I'm here with you. You know what I mean? Like, I've been watching you guys side by side, and here I am with you. It's very exciting.
Oh,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, of course. So part of our goal here at Scrolling to Death is to educate parents on the latest research and the latest legislation, basically what's going on in the world of social media and online safety. But more importantly, we want to bring you guys real and relatable stories from parents and kids and teens as well. So we're all in the same boat. We're dealing with the same struggles. Between all of us on the call, we have 10 kids, so we have a lot to look forward to. and we really have a common goal. So we all want to get through this time successfully to provide our kids with the right balance of support and guidance, but also independence when it comes to their screen time. So that starts with talking and having these conversations, sharing our stories, sharing our struggles and our successes. So with that, we're going to jump in and hear from Jess. Jess is a mom of 4 and lives in Virginia, and she has, I think, a really relatable story. So you gave your daughter a phone, and you've been having some not so great experiences with it. So why don't you fill us in? And we're not going to say any of the kids' names for privacy.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to share. About 3 or 4 years ago, my husband and we were going through the throes of parenthood. Raising a lot of little people. I'm sure many of us who are moms and parents can relate to like just needing to entertain your older kids while you could take care of the younger ones. And so my father-in-law had just gotten a new phone and somehow in conversation offered it to my daughter. And we thought about it for a minute and we're like, sure, she can just use it, while we're connected to Wi-Fi at home, kind of just use it as like an iPad device. So she was about 7 at that time, and we just used it to send her pictures and allow her to like FaceTime with grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Up until maybe a year ago when like YouTube became a thing, like it was pretty innocent. I would say she would kind of pretend to be a YouTuber and she would record herself. It was super cute. But then once the YouTube usage started, that's when things kind of like a red flag was raised where like, I don't know what she's seeing, like, I don't know. I could be anywhere in the house and she could be anywhere in the house, but I'm 9 times out of 10 not in the same room as her. And if I am, I'm distracted by other things. So I can't see her screen or anything. So I think for a long time, I just turned a blind eye to it with games and the ads that are on games on all of these devices that she would come to me and say, Mom, what's this? Or we would, peek over while there's an ad playing on her iPad or phone. And we're like, whoa, what in the world? Like there's really inappropriate things happening on these ads, on these games. So I think for me personally, I used it as a tool to keep my child entertained for many years. And I think I wanted to believe that it was innocent for a long time. So up until this year, she only had contact with family members on her devices. We didn't have her have any friends. And then she just started 5th grade this fall and came home and said, Mom, I need you to type in my passcode so I can get so-and-so's number. And it was like the chaos and busyness of like after school. And I was just like, whose number, okay. And so I kind of just checked in with myself and it was like, okay, I'm going to let this go for now, but I'm going to make sure that I stay on top of monitoring that group chat thread that was created with 4 other kids her age.
Mm-hmm.
3 were boys, 2 were girls. So she was one of the girls. And they're in 5th grade. So they're 9, 10, 11 age. A couple weeks ago, this is very fresh. So I just want to say, like, if the parent of this child is listening, this is not an attack on you or even people whose children have been exposed to things on the internet that may have spread from your children to other children. Like, this is not an attack on you as a parent. This is really to just raise awareness and help other parents to understand what your kids may be exposed to and deal with that how you feel compelled to. But for me, it was really important for me to make sure that I knew what was going into my daughter's head. Being someone who struggles with mental health myself, I really care about what my kids ingest mentally. Like, that's really, really important to me because we're raising little adults. They're going to be adults one day, and they're going to have to process all of the things that they're going through now as kids. And so staying ahead of that for me is really important. My daughter was home sick one day, and I had been monitoring this group chat that was happening every maybe 2 or 3 days just to be kind of hyper vigilant about what was going on in it, because we are charting new territory with entering like the preteen years and body changes and everything like that. So it's just really important for me to make sure, like I said, we are monitoring what's happening in these relationships. And I came across some very concerning content in this group chat, only a couple, maybe 2 weeks into the chat starting. And the first one was regarding bombs and bombing your mom, like random, weird, scary things that that probably were picked up in maybe gaming or something like that. But it's kind of stuff that you don't mess around with. And in that same kind of spot in the group text thread, there was a video that was created with an app called CapCut. You can take audio that's pre-recorded and put it on a video or like a clip or of something that you create. There was a video created by one of these children that had photos of kids from their school, and the audio that played behind the still image of the kids says, can I say it? Like, can I just read it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's grown men recorded in an audio that I guess these kids had like pasted on top of this screenshot of kids that go to my kid's school. And it says, would you guys be there for me if I was going through something? And the other guys are laughing like, nope, absolutely not. And, they keep on laughing. And they say, I hope it sucks, whatever you're going through. I hope it emotionally scars you for the rest of your life. And they're laughing some more. And then they say, I can't wait to go to your funeral knowing that I could have changed that outcome.
What?
Yeah. My daughter and my husband and I were all like in the room when I came across this, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And so we watched it together, and I could tell that it made my daughter really uncomfortable. But the fact that like we have a very open and honest relationship, she and I, and the fact that she didn't, it was only a day, like it had happened the day before we found it. But the fact that even something like that was too scary for her to come bring to me, or that she didn't feel, maybe she was embarrassed to bring it to me. Like she would maybe feel like she was getting that kid in trouble or something like that. But we had an opportunity to walk through it together because I caught it. And after going through a couple of more messages, there was another one that was another video. It wasn't like anybody's face or anything. I think it had already been created on CapCut. It was just sent to directly. This one was directly from one child to my child. And it said, the person that sent you this was too afraid to tell you this in person or in text, but they wanted to tell you that you're trashing the game. Oh my gosh, like even a monkey could do it better than you. You're too stupid to even comprehend this message. Okay, bye. So bullying.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to go to your funeral knowing that I could have changed the outcome that was dark enough for me to like get chills in my body. And the fact that these kids are 10 and they're being exposed to this kind of content and don't have anybody helping them like walk through that and recognize the danger that comes from that. Maybe they're joking, but there is a lot of weight that goes behind that. I felt the need to reach out to the parent and say, hey, this is what's going on. I found this on this group chat, and this is not something that I take lightly or our family takes lightly, and we'll need to block your child from communicating with my daughter. And this is not an attempt to like single you out or push you away, but this is to protect us.
How was that accepted by the other parent?
So she was very receptive and apologetic. And she said, this child, my child will no longer have access to the internet. This is a second offense. And we're taking away their devices until further notice.
Okay. How you doing, Jess? How you doing with that story? I just want to check in with you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm feeling a little heightened every time it comes up. It's just kind of like, ooh, and I think we're the first generation that's having to deal with this. So there's no textbook on this. And I don't feel like we are navigating this. And I've never been a parent to a 10-year-old before either. So I have a lot of grace there, but I'm so thankful that I caught it. What are the pros and cons of our kids having these devices? Because 9 times out of 10, they just want to play those stupid games. The ads are probably more prevalent than the actual game. The time, like the screen time that they get on the game is less than the ads that pop up. And Lord only knows what's popping up on them. And so we just decided, if you want to call a family member, FaceTime a family member, you can use my phone. And guess what? We made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes. And this has nothing to do with what you have. Like, you haven't done anything wrong, but we made a mistake by giving you a device too soon.
Jess, can I ask you for just clarification? How did you find it? Did you find it because you were just doing your regular like monitoring of it? Or was her device in front of her and she was kind of going through it and you were looking over her shoulder?
So I was doing my routine check. My mommy instinct tells me to, check in on my baby's devices. So I get in there and I scroll through messages, and I've told my kids, this is not an attempt to invade your space or your business, but you're not 18 yet. It's my job to help manage what goes in, what you see and what you take in.
When you were doing your routine check, did she like fight like, Mom, like, no, I don't want you to take my iPad, or I don't want you to look at these? Or was she willing to give those to you?
She's always willing to let me look at her devices. I think because of the relationship that we have, it's very open and transparent. I think
Absolutely.
That helps her to know that I'm not out to make her look bad or punish her, embarrass her, anything like that. My goal is to keep her safe. And I think that she knows that. That's the underlying, felt sense for her, that I'm here for her.
And it makes sense because even when, you kind of looking at those videos or whatever the kids made, you mentioned something that it was so heavy, right? And it was so dark that it's probably hard for even 10-year-olds to put words to and communicate like how this makes them feel. They probably get this sense of like, I feel uncomfortable, but I don't know why. Yeah. And this doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem good. And then you mentioned another caveat that you thought maybe it was your child was so scared to get the other kid in trouble, or it's interesting. She was very willing for you to see it. And I think a lot of times with preteens or even kids, when they don't have the words for something, the compliance of like, yes, here you go, mom. And almost like them wanting you to find that.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
And it's like the kids at these ages, they think that really dark and aggressive things are like funny. I think that's a lot of it. They don't understand the danger yet. And I wonder if your daughter was just like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to think this is funny rather than this is concerning and I should tell my mom about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just overreacting. Did she talk about afterward how she felt when she first saw it?
She didn't. I kind of tried to dig a little bit there. Like, how did this make you feel? I think she was so uncomfortable with it that she wasn't really able to put it into words. And I wanted to honor that for her and give her that space. So we kind of tabled it for a little while.
And the monitoring is a big, big conversation that we're hearing all over the place. And a lot of the experts that we're hearing from are not big fans of monitoring when it comes to these devices because it's like a breach of trust. And I think, but when I hear it referenced that way, it's in older kids. I think it's more like on the teenage age range and upper teens where you need to start giving them some freedom and really focusing on, and this applies for all ages, but focusing on the strength of your relationship and the closeness of your relationship so that you don't really have to monitor. You'll be able to tell if they're participating in something that is making them act a certain way, then you'll sort of know that now might be a good time to step in and monitor. But I think with the younger ages, if parents are choosing to give their kids a device of their own, 10 or under, I would be monitoring it as well.
Yeah.
Just because these kids are not old enough to understand what's inappropriate and what's not.
Well, and too, they're trying out social skills as well. So especially if they're in group chats, which is, an opportunity to learn social skills and to talk amongst your friends even after school. But also too is helping your child come up with the communication skills or, hey, if something isn't feeling good regarding this conversation, what do you do? Even a 9, 10-year-old, they might not even know. They might just get that uncomfortable, that intuition of like, oh, this doesn't feel right. For sure that group chats need to be monitored to see how the social skills going. Let's think about school, even around the playground, even around recess, even around, the classroom. Those social interactions are being monitored and supervised for the most part. Like there is a duty, there is an adult around to monitor and supervise those conversation interactions to help support positive social skills.
It's actually interesting that you brought up that, like, saying, hey, this is not okay, or because there was another child in the group chat that said, hey guys, like if we're going to have this group chat, there's one rule. We're going to keep it G. And we're not going to talk about murder and all the things that we're not allowed to talk about at school. And I was so proud of that child. And I reached out to that child's parent and said, I am so proud of your kid for sticking up for what is right.
Or did you write this? To the parent.
Well, that actually segues into my other mention. And that is that I was surprised to learn that I was the only one monitoring of 7 parents, 6 or 7 parents. And that kind of took me by surprise and kind of made my stomach turn a little bit. And like, I'm not trying to blame anybody, but if we're giving our kids devices, it's our job to make sure that they're okay. What they're doing with their screen time is not actually detrimental to their mental well-being.
Whether or not they're seeing inappropriate things, just purely the amount of time these kids are spending on the screens is bad for their brains and bad for their development, bad for their physical health, all these things. And so despite the fact that more people are talking about all these things, like that is my experience too, is that most parents are not even thinking twice about it, at least in my communities and what I hear from people like you. And so the goal here is to like bring this more mainstream. Like everyone as parents need to think critically about their decisions around screen time and create shared family values. Like, this is what our values are within this family when it comes to our screens. We're all going to tackle that together and talk about it every day and make sure we're all on the same page and making healthy choices. I think you bringing it up to the other parents probably triggered something in their mind now. Like, oh, I need to start. Like, it just takes one person saying something.
Yeah.
Put something in their brain like, okay, I actually need to start thinking about this critically and checking in with my kid.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the society and the culture that we live in is so visified that it's just like, here's this, I'm going to go make dinner, or here's this, I have to write this email, or I have to go to the grocery store, or whatever our next, task is. We're on to the next thing, and we forget about the importance of taking time for checking in with our kid.
Yeah. We talked to a psychotherapist named Nicole Renyon last week. I said a lot of parents are using the iPad or a screen as a babysitter. Like, I have to go make dinner. Here you go. Like, you can watch a show on this, or you can play with your games on the iPad. And she was like, well, that begs the question, like, why can't that kid just figure out something to do? Like, why can't you let your kid just be bored and creative and find something to do? There are so many other options in the home if you just take that away. And we hear from a lot of parents like that. I took away the iPad, and then they actually didn't really care, or they mumbled and grumbled for a minute. They found something else to do.
Yep.
So I think we think it's easier to give the screen when really it's better for their development and all these things, but it's actually not as much of a struggle as we make it seem to just be like, you figure something out for 30 minutes while I do this other thing. So some states are passing laws requiring parents to report things like this, like cyberbullying, to the school so that the school can address it. So is that something you thought about doing?
Yeah, I actually did reach out to the school to let them know, because there was an incident that had nothing to do with phones or devices or videos or anything like that happened at the school in my child's class last year. So I wanted them to be aware that actually the police had to get involved in what happened last year based on the content that was written in some birthday cards. It was just important to me that the school was aware of what happened, even though it didn't happen at school.
Right. Because if it's happening on the phone, it's probably happening in person. And we're just all trying to keep some ounce of control over what our kids get exposed to. So we really have to empower the teachers and the principal with enough information to what's going on behind the scenes, because then that's trickling over into what's happening at school as well.
Yeah. And that was part of the piece that when I went to the principal and said, this is what's happening, they said, I'm going to notify the teachers so that they can be aware of this at recess, and things that are said in the classroom aren't taken lightly.
Looking back on that experience, is there anything that you would have done differently? Or even, I know that you just mentioned having 3 younger kids.
It's one of those things that you don't think that it could happen to you. For me, I think that prioritizing, even if it's different than what everybody else is doing, but making sure that you go with your gut instinct on what you value in your home and with your family and with your kids, and not going along with what everybody else is doing for the sake of keeping, status or, social status or anything like that. Or I don't want my kid to be the odd one out, which is what, that was part of my thought process when my daughter came to me and said, I got to add these people's numbers, we're starting a group chat. And so I was like, well, I'm not gonna, I'll give these kids the benefit of the doubt. But I think in hindsight, I would have stuck to my ground and said, look, this is our rules. This is what we're going to follow. And I think up until this happened, I didn't really see a need to have those rules other than what, my gut was telling me. But I think it's no coincidence that you guys started this podcast right alongside of when this happened for our family, because I feel like I was really able to lean in and get a lot of information from everything that you're sharing. And I'm a lot more aware and informed of, things that are happening that I think that we turn a blind eye to more often than not. But the information that's being shared here on the podcast and on your Instagram is it's real and it's helpful.
Jess, I just want to validate the fact that you said something, you know, and I think this has just been kind of the theme a little bit, is you are an expert of your child, and you having that gut feeling of like, I don't know about this, but let's see how it goes, and monitoring it, and then catching this. Your child coming home and like, I really want to do this. I think it was awesome of you to, at the time, to lean into that. And you did have some parameters on that. Your child got to see you in action to protect them, also felt comfortable enough to watch this with you and to plan ahead of what this is going to look like and how you can move forward from this. You gave your child such great skills, life skills on how to manage this and what to do forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's interesting too, because I asked her the other day, hey, you haven't mentioned like your phone at all. And she's like, yeah, I really don't need it. You know? And we haven't had that hard conversation yet where we've, you know, explained to her, we've decided it's best that you don't, you know, use it anymore. We've just kind of like put it away and said, we're going to discuss a plan, you know, and we'll come back to you. And she's decided on her own, like, I don't need it, you know? And she and my other three also, like, since we kind of put the iPad and the phone away, they're spending so much more time outside and in nature and just playing with the dogs and riding bikes. And like, we've seen a difference in the level of irritability has gone way down. I like have noticed with one of my other kids, when we take the iPad or if we're like, okay, time's up, like it's dinner time, the irritability is like, whoa, because they are so focused and like in whatever they're doing that they feel like it's part of them or it's really their experience, kind of like virtual reality, you know, like you're so in it, you know, forget where you are and you forget that your life is your life. And I've just noticed like such a difference in go outside and play basketball and natural dopamine. Yeah, exactly.
That's so amazing to hear. And it's been really interesting to learn about that irritability and like what that actually is. They're getting those dopamine hits in their brain that makes them feel good. And so when you literally take that away, that feel good thing is gone. And so of course they're going to be irritable. Right. And so it's like it's not in their control. And so getting them off of that and engaging with each other and that in nature is just so good for their brain. I'm really, really happy to hear that they're doing really well and not struggling with it, because we ended up pulling the iPads too. We were giving them 10 minutes a day, the two big kids. My son was so obsessed with it. He like would talk about it all day. He only did 10 minutes, but then all he talked about the rest of the day was that dragging game that he couldn't wait to get back to. Just didn't feel right anymore. Like it was just too much for me. And so I cut it, and it's been probably 2 months and he's asked about it one time. Wow. Like, so it's done. Like he doesn't care. Like we're in control of it. And if we say, we don't think that's good for you, like they're not going to challenge us on it when it comes down to it.
And ultimately it is our decision. Like it's our responsibility to make that decision for them, because their prefrontal cortex, their brain is not developed enough to make those decisions themselves.
And I will say too, to what Ashley said, like, I think that was kind of you and like a connecting moment for you to trust your daughter with having that group chat. Like, I think that you didn't have any reason not to trust her in the situation. And she, you know, ran it by you. Like, this is something I'd like to do. And you guys decided together. That's great. And a great connection piece. You had the trust in her to do that. And I think that's something you learned and experienced together. So I agree with Ashley that was a great connector for you guys.
Yeah. I didn't see it that way until you guys just said that, but thanks for saying that.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think group chats could be fine, but it's really knowing the kids, it's knowing the parents, because every kid has, you know, strengths and weaknesses. There are some kids, you know, preteens that are doing really well socially and know the appropriateness. Like that one kid that you said that mentioned like, hey guys, let's keep it G-rated, like none of this. And then there's some kids that are really struggling in that department. We might not know the back end of those stories, what those other kids are struggling with developmentally, emotionally. And so I think it's also just really important to know the kids that are on there, get to know the parents, know their strengths and weaknesses. How can you prepare your kid to, hey, if you come across a kid that is really struggling in these departments, like how do you stand up for yourself?
So you, Jess, mentioned that you guys have just put the phone away for now, but you haven't had that conversation about like, is the phone going away for good, until she reaches an age you guys feel is more appropriate. And I know that taking away a device in response to something inappropriate can feel like a punishment to the kid. And we hear a lot of that kind of talk. But in this case, it doesn't seem like it's bothering her so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. She's eventually going to have a phone and have to learn how to navigate those conversations and a phone in general, like all of the things that entails smartphone at your fingertips. I just think it's so telling that she hasn't asked for it. Like she's recognizing the harm, and me just asking her that question the other day, how do you feel about not having your phone? And she said, I'm going to try to wait until after Christmas to have it. I really don't need it. And so that I was just like, wow, like that is so telling that she recognized what's happening there and she wants what's best for her.
Yeah.
And I haven't put a lot of emphasis on it either. Like I haven't been like, this phone is bad. I haven't really like put a negative spin on it. I don't want it to be like that. Just want to raise awareness for her and my other kids that it's not that it's bad. It's just, we have to navigate it delicately.
Yeah. And like when the phone comes back, like we'll have a plan, like maybe more of a set plan and more of a strategy around what our family values are around this device.
Right.
There's all these kid-friendly phone products, which is a really interesting thing to look into. I have 2 being shipped to me right now from 2 different companies. So I'm going to do little reviews on these kid-friendly phones. I don't know how I just feel about it in general, but it's like they're supposed to have no internet browser, no social media. So there are some safer limitations there as opposed to an iPhone has anything you want. So, we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear that.
Yeah. And there is all these monitoring apps and software that people layer over onto their kids' phones that can catch certain words and certain terms. Again, I don't know how I feel about that either, but, just something for us to keep educating ourselves on how we can keep our kids safe while still maintaining their trust. Right?
Yes, that's the key.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fine line we have to dance.
For sure.
Yeah.
And keep dancing. It's just a... It's just a dance until they're 18 and you're like, okay, I trust you now, right? But
best wishes. Go on.
I know.
Also, too, hearing your story, Jess, and how, she didn't really care about not having your phone and almost embracing the outdoors and probably even building more and nurturing more connection with her siblings, right? Yeah. And I was wondering too, it sounded like she was looking for connection somewhere, if that meant like a group chat, but she didn't necessarily get that. Instead, it looks like she has been looking for connection outside within herself and her family. And it's hitting that need. Right? That's what we do, Nicki. Like that's what we want is that mission of empowering families to connect as a family and to get outside and be present and mindful and authentic.
I think I'm learning too, like the kids are surprising me even more. Like your daughter in this case, without probably having the words to describe it, like she realizes that spending time with her screen while giving her dopamine hits was actually making her feel worse. And now not having it, she's recognizing that not having it, she feels better.
I think you're right.
So smart. So smart.
Yeah, because she would come out of her room after watching YouTube and you could tell she was like depleted. Like she had a need for connection and thought that that's what was helping her connect, but she wasn't actually getting poured into. Right. She left the phone feeling empty and still needing that real one-on-one or family connection of let's do something together, that natural dopamine rather than the screen time dopamine. And yeah, I think it is really telling that she's recognizing that organically.
Yeah. It's like evolved. Like these kids know, and they want us to, I mean, Nicole Runyon said it right, Ash, like they want us to save them. They want us to take away the dangerous things, and they count on us for that.
Yes. Put limits on when they don't have the words, when they can't identify those feelings. They want parents to set limits, to set boundaries.
It feels safe for them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think they definitely feel supported in it.
Yeah. Would you want to talk a little bit about parenting and how you, I know that you've adjusted your approach to sharing your kids online?
Absolutely. Well, I had seen one of your posts many years ago on Facebook that I was like, this is interesting. I want to know more about this, and kind of just have watched what you've done over the years. And as you have started this podcast and advocating for, just sharing the truth about what's going on the dark web with kid content, and listening to both of you talk about how exciting it is to share when you have a baby and all of those things. And I've done the same thing. I've gone through, these very exciting milestones where you're having a baby or your kid turns 1 or whatever it is. And you've got these adorable pictures that you want everybody to see. But I think that just learning the truth about what happens when your kids' pictures are posted and what could happen to them really scared me. And so I decided for myself and for my family that it's not worth the risk of what could happen to my kids' pictures and videos and personal information. I've always been very conscious of not posting locations and not posting really personal information, where they go to school, things like that. I'm very private. I've always been very private about that kind of stuff just because it's scary. Like, we live in a scary world.
Yeah, it doesn't quite feel right?
No, but I think that as I have become more aware of what could happen to the kids' pictures, I have just felt more and more convicted to pull those pictures down. And like you said, once you post it, it's there. But I just in the last month have gone through all of my Facebook and all of my Instagram and deleted every single picture of my kids' faces.
And it probably took forever.
It took me days.
It's crazy how hard it is.
It's hard.
It was one of your episodes I listened to a couple weeks ago, and I was like, that's it. I'm done. Never again will the internet see my kids' faces.
I think that was the title of the video.
I think you're right. Navigating that with family is really tricky. I ended up asking my mom if she would consider taking down the pictures that she's posted of my kids, which is a lot of pictures, and we haven't gotten there yet, but she was willing, and we will tackle that bear soon.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. But I do feel like there needs to be the message of, do you know what you're doing to your kids' mental health? When they look back on everything that you're posting about them from age 0 to age 18 and what your perspective of them is, what are they going to think about themselves? How is that going to impact their future? And like I said, being someone who struggles with mental health, I'm very aware and protective of my kids' mental health. And it's not worth it to me to share a little bit about my kids on their birthday so that, I can get the likes, send it to their grandparents and their aunts and uncles and say, look at this adorable picture, and keep it between us. And it's a lot more intimate that way. It feels a lot more meaningful. There's not these empty happy birthdays coming from literally strangers to them. They're strangers. They don't
know them.
Then there's exactly. I've seen people's kids in person that I've never met before. And I'm like, that's Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Shane doesn't know me. I'm a stranger.
It's like a celebrity's children, like that, you know those kids, and it's like,
it's totally
but
true.
These people are not celebrity. Like, we don't need to know them.
Exactly. And I think it takes their autonomy away. And I don't think that's fair to them.
I love you sharing that. And I think the connection too between we're sharing them, but we don't want them to share themselves on social media when they're, so it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't match.
Like, it starts with us as the parents making critical decisions and thinking ahead. Like, how do we want their relationship with the internet to look?
Right.
And we're going to set that expectation now and show them what is healthy behavior.
Right. Exactly.
You're going to have to get it so right for a teenager to look back on the last, 10, 15 years and go, oh yeah, Mom, Dad, like you said that perfectly. That's exactly how I wanted myself to be portrayed in front of everyone. Like, we have to have a crystal ball. We have to have those cards laid out perfectly. And we have to, like, you know what I mean? And the chances of that are pretty low.
I mean, if you think about like your parents' like photo books that you might have now, if those were all online for like everybody to see, like how weird that would be. Like I would be embarrassed. I would be uncomfortable. Like why do all these people need all these baby pictures of me?
Right. And if you want to post those yourself, go for it. But then it's your experience instead of somebody else's of you.
Right.
Right. Thank you for sharing about the parenting topic. I think that's a big one for us. And I love your story of thinking critically about it and deciding not to post them, and then having the strength to have that conversation with a family member that I know is a difficult thing, especially with an older family member. There's a bit of a block there across the board in understanding. And so that's difficult. And I commend you on doing that because it's very uncomfortable.
Thank you for sharing your story about your child and what your child and your family have gone through.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, it's just so interesting, like to see the difference in their mood boost after they go out and play basketball for 15 minutes. They come inside, whoo, that was fun. I'm feeling hungry, instead of going off of the screen and being like, Mom, I need you, Mom.
Yeah.
Like, I'm white. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a huge difference. So like I talked to my therapist about all of this and how to navigate it. And she said, this is actually a really good opportunity for you guys to set these boundaries with your kids early on. Like, your kids are young. You're catching this super early, which is such a blessing. Yeah. I'm really like grateful that we have resources, we have your podcast to listen to, and that we're navigating this with a lot more attention to detail than we probably would have if this didn't happen.
Yeah. And sometimes it does take some kind of exposure, something slightly inappropriate happening for the family to just be like, okay, wait a second. Like, let's backtrack for a second and be purposeful in how we're spending our time with our screens.
Yeah, absolutely, Nicki. Absolutely.
Really, thank you so much for sharing that story. I do think there's probably most parents are dealing with things just like this. And so for me, like the big things are, make sure you have a close relationship with your kids and let them know they can come to you if something inappropriate happens. But if they're not coming to you, like watch them and make sure you're monitoring their attitude and like try to catch these things ahead of time. Talk to other parents about it, right? Like let the other parent know that something has happened, or even before it happens, like get to know the other parents and let them know that this conversation is going on the phones. I think just more parents need to be connecting on these topics. Be careful with overall, like always be careful with what your kid is looking at on these screens. Do your research on YouTube, do your research on the games with the ads. There's a lot going on there that parents need to think about.
Know the kids. So if your child is on group chats or also messaging on social media platforms, is know the kids that they're talking to. It's know the parents, have them come over, get to know them. So you know if the kid struggles with social skills, or if you know the kid struggles with impulse or hyperactivity, or anything like that. Definitely sitting down with them and coming up with more ideas and strategies to, hey, when something inappropriate shows up, this is what you do. Giving them effective communication skills to utilize that. If something's not appropriate on the group chat, say, hey guys, this is the rule, like keep it G, like just what that child did, so that they just have the confidence and the assertiveness skills to manage that. And then, hey, talk to an adult, tell an adult.
Nash, I like what you said about knowing the kid's friends. I think something people could do right now is if your kid has a relationship with someone online, like tell him to invite or tell him or her to invite that kid over. Mm-hmm. Like if you have this close relationship online, it should also be in person, actually more heavily in person. So have that kid over, like observe and get to know the kid. And then maybe eventually you guys can have the family over. But I think that's an interesting thing that we don't think about doing.
Kind of preemptively saying, hey, if this happens, I think taking it to the next level of making sure that your child feels safe coming to you, and that they're not going to get in trouble. They're not going to be punished for coming to you, that whatever they're bringing to you, it's more important than punishing them for whatever might have happened.
And that's something we've said probably 8 different times on our different podcasts. Yeah. Like they have to trust that you're not going to shame them or punish them.
Or embarrass them.
Like take a breath. Like you may be upset, but you can't react with like, I told you not to talk to that person or watch that thing, Exactly. They're not going to come to you anymore if you do that.
Exactly.
And that is not what you want, right? Everybody, thanks for listening to Jessica's story. I hope you found it relatable. Well, we hope you don't find it relatable, but you might. So I think we came up with some good takeaways for you to reflect on. And we're going to continue having parents on, having teenagers on, and different experts in this space.
Thanks everyone for listening to Scrolling to Death. Please click follow so we could just continue spreading the awareness and helping parents with social media use in their children.
Thanks, guys.